Hello, cooking enthusiasts. In this video, I'm going to go over my very first guanciale project. So this was roughly 3.5 months in the making. Let's jump right into this footage and talk about something I actually didn't even remember doing. For the spices with this charcuterie project, I wanted to play around with toasting them, and I became fascinated with, I believe, the Chinese cooking technique where you can toast certain spices directly salt and it helps sort of diffuse and distribute the heat. Looking back on this now, I'm probably not going to be toasting spices for this kind of application. I think I probably mellowed them out too much, and I actually want the spices as sort of pungent as possible because you don't get tons of flavor transfer into the actual charcuterie. The mixture for this guanciale was pretty basic, pretty much just salt and pepper and curing salt with just a little bit of juniper. I've seen a number of different guanciale recipes call for other things like garlic and even herbs, and I don't even know if I've seen one with actual juniper, but that is sort of a holdout from me previously making pancetta using the pig face. And we were going to grind these spices very fine, but off camera, the spice grinder broke in this exact moment, so we had to do it manually. And with all of my charcuterie projects, I prefer an equilibrium cure, so the salt and spices are carefully measured, and then everything gets vacuum sealed with the protein. Now we actually bought two cheeks, which I guess makes sense. So we were able to try two slightly different flavor profiles. Still salt and pepper, of course, but also dried porcini mushroom for additional savoriness, as well as dried candy cap mushrooms, which are interesting because, especially when combined with sweetness, they are a natural source of that imitation maple syrup flavor. I thought that would be an interesting addition because later in the process, we are applying honey and garlic powder. At the time, we had to separate applying the different spices because the garlic powder hadn't arrived yet. Unfortunately, in this next footage, the camera settings were a little bit off, which is why it looks a little weird. But basically, once the garlic powder had arrived, we applied the honey and this special purple stripe garlic powder from Burlap and Barrel, and finally sealed everything together. If you are familiar with charcuterie at all, you know there is an initial curing stage where the salt, sugar, and spices are actually penetrating the piece of meat. These pork cheeks are relatively thin, so I only gave it between 7 and 10 days to cure. I don't have a dedicated curing chamber or the right type of cellar, so we are using dry aging bags. Even though these look like plastic bags, they are ever so slightly porous, and that allows for moisture to leave the product very slowly. You can also get a similar product in the form of sort of free-form plant-based wraps, and we are starting to experiment with those as well. Now we are really jumping forward in time about 3 months. This footage is actually of the honey garlic guanciale, but we had to actually undo this. As of recording, the honey garlic guanciale isn't done yet, but this demonstrates what we did do to the standard guanciale. Once the guanciale had lost 30% of its weight in moisture, it was transferred dry aging bag back into a regular vacuum seal bag. This was a totally optional step, but I wanted to give it a few days at least to equalize in moisture. So now it's finally time for the big reveal of the standard guanciale. Please ignore that the left side of the camera is blurry, probably smudged with some type of pork-related grease, but it looked totally amazing. If you are familiar with guanciale or pork cheeks in general, you know that it is mostly fat, but even the lean portions of this pork cheek had some marbling, which looked amazing. I'll probably throw up some close-up photos. And because this is a whole muscle properly cured, we were actually able to slice this and taste a little bit raw because it had taken so long to age. I think that really helped tenderize the product, even though there is a pretty high salt content. It doesn't taste aggressively salty, probably due to the high fat ratio. And it's definitely something we're going to be making pretty much constantly in my house. And I think I'm going to leave it with a little bit of a cliffhanger. The next episode is going to be making carbonara with this fairly traditional guanciale, as well as opening up and making a dish with my honey garlic guanciale. If you have any questions about this project or cooking in general, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, thank you for watching.